The Dance of Dreams. What an epic mystery name. So this mystery is actually an intro scenario in the core rulebook of Vaesen. As is, the mystery would probably take around 5 to 6 hours, but I chose to shorten it a little bit, and there is a specific part in the beginning that they say to remove if you want to make it a one-shot mystery. So I did do that, and it ended up being about 4 hours. The setting is mid-1800s in Uppsala, Sweden. The basic setup is the PCs are given a handwritten note inviting them to the shadow play called The Dance of Dreams. A detective by the name of Olas has invited them because he's also heard of people having some strange dreams that are staying at the Witch Cat Inn. From here on out, there's going to be spoilers, so players, goodbye, and hello GMs. Okay, so here's what's actually going down at this Witch Cat Inn. There was a secret meeting at the inn 50 years ago to devise a plan altering Scandinavia's future. These are the participants that were in the meeting. Oscar was against this plan, so he was killed. But don't worry, as his body was prepared with magic so that his death would serve a purpose to this overall plan anyway. But 50 years later, Oscar returns as a revenant seeking revenge on his murderers. Oscar mistakes the player characters for his murderers, posing a pretty direct threat. In addition, Oscar's return activates buried magic, enhancing the Vaesen power and causing human constructions to decay around Witch Cat Inn. The mystery lays out 3 specific things that the game master needs to know. The first is that Oscar's return signifies plan execution and triggers the changes across Scandinavia. Now, the mystery does not go into the details of what this change actually means, as it's part of the broader story of Vaesen and is something that is explored in possible later mysteries. So while I was planning, it was a little bit tough for me to understand the motivation and be able to display that at the table, but in the end, it didn't matter and it didn't come up during play. The second thing is that Olas Klint is a private detective and is a Rosenberger. The Rosenbergers are a secret society that believes all Vaesen are monsters, and they are hunting them down to kill them or banish them. Now, a tip for you, if this is your first mystery or you plan to really confine this to a one-shot story, I would recommend getting rid of this extra layer because it's just an additional thing to try and manage if you're trying to learn the system and your players aren't as familiar with all the background stuff of Vaesen. So this was something that I opted to not spend a lot of focus time on and focus more on the core mystery instead. And the third thing is the inn is slowly falling apart, and this is really a cause of the supernatural coming back. So as the supernatural is gaining power, the inn is slowly deteriorating. So players get this invitation and travel to the Witch Cat Inn, and this is an awesome time to start really digging into the atmosphere. So of course it's thunderstorming when they arrive, with harsh winds and dampness seeping through their clothes. The darkness between the lightning swallows them over and over. At first, the inn feels like salvation from the storm and the dark. The ceiling may be leaky, but there are warm fires, oil lamps, songs and laughter, hot meals, and beer. They are greeted by Olas, who says that when he stayed at the end, he felt a very great presence and needs the players' help to figure out what's happening. Next, we'll go into the major locations that your players are likely to visit. The location is very confined for the mystery as it just takes place in the inn, but I felt like that was really helpful for an intro mystery. First, I'll start with the dining room. There are several NPCs here, and it's storming outside and late at night, so have fun with these different NPCs. To be honest, the mix of NPCs started to feel like a really bad joke. You had an alcoholic, a paranoid chemist, and a priest. So get creative with these NPCs. They're all going to be a little bit quirky, which I felt like fit really well with this mystery, but also the overall vibe of Vaesen. And here are some of the essential clues to try to work in before they leave the dining room. Sophia is the one putting on the play, and unfortunately she's being abused by her father. Make sure to show this either by directly showing it or hinting to some of her bruises. Make sure players get the history of Nora, who is the innkeeper's wife, And she disappeared with a theater troupe and died a few months later of cholera. And this really explains the innkeeper, Sammy's motivation, as he thinks that Nora has come back to haunt him. That's not what's going on here, but it really explains his actions throughout the mystery. You'll want to share some of the terrible nightmares that the guest has been having, and of course that Sophia loves her art and usually does so in the attic, mostly to stay away from her father. This is a great time to trigger the first step of the countdown, and everyone starts to fall asleep as they're in the dining room, and Sammy is freaking out about this happening because of course he thinks it's Nora. Sammy recommends that the PCs lock themselves in their room to protect themselves. This theme of sleeping is going to be really important throughout the mystery, so make sure to weave it and work it in. And it's definitely not too early to trigger it right at the beginning of the scenario. It's likely that your PCs are going to end up investigating the attic or have Sophia invite them up for the play, of course. Now in the attic, it is littered with trunks, boxes, books, and old clothes, and Sophia has set up her shadow theater here. Now, of course, Sophia really wants to share her play with the PCs, but my players did not bite. They knew something odd and potentially dangerous was going to happen, so they did not let that play happen. So bear with me here because I would really like to read this part of the mystery that my players didn't get to experience that I think is really cool. A young man wanders through Europe, seeing things few people are fortunate enough to witness. He dances with queens and visits Versailles and the Palais Royal. There, people perform his plays and praise his name, and life dances along like a dream. But the People's Revolution sweeps the land with grenades and fire, and those who are playing and singing end up dead by the side of the road. The young man flees the song of the guillotine. Our hero returns home to a city in the north. He walks through its gates without shoes, poor and mute. The house where he was born is burnt to ashes, and his family is missing. He kneels by the side of the road begging for coin, and no one knows that his name was once sung in the palaces of Europe. Suddenly he sees things no one else does. Creatures creeping, flying, and crawling as the invisibles reveal themselves to him. When he points them out to others, he is mocked and beaten. A man picks him up from the street and has him bathed and clothed. His name is Albert, and his mansion is a place of love and song. Our young hero performs his play and sings to him for days and nights, and they eat fruit and drink wine. Albert introduces his friends. In the young man's dreams, they are all dancing together. But the dreams lie. It was you. You brought me here. You asked me to sit down and talk. We spoke of the future of the world. I had the right to refuse. You said so and smiled. And then you butchered me like a pig. One hangs from the ceiling. You buried my body in unholy ground without priest or consecration. Now dreams are all I have left. I gaze out over the audience at the Palais Royal. I dance with a princess, I eat cake, I look into your eyes, Albert, and I let you take my dirty hand. You summon me to Pierre's Inn. You make me a villainous proposition and I decline. You cut me up, I scream, not wanting to die. At last you are back. Welcome. As you can see, that story is pretty epic, and I really enjoyed the background and visual that story provokes. And my players didn't get to experience it. But I understand why, because they were really hesitant in making sure that they weren't getting themselves into trouble. But remember, Oscar is going to visit them no matter if the play happens or not. So while it might seem more epic if the play does happen, as the players go down from the attic, Oscar is going to show up and interrupt them as they're trying to go down the stairs. Now, this first sighting is just supposed to be a spook moment, not necessarily one where Oscar is actively fighting, so I just had him rush through the PCs and not actually attack them. Now, the most important clue to share here is Nora collected notes on the witch cat ghost, and that Nora's room is locked and has been preserved ever since Nora went away. This will likely lead the PCs to Nora's room, and this is where the actual attacking Oscar comes to play. However, note that this interaction can happen actually anywhere, so if they don't end up going to Nora's room, you can insert it in any location and it'll work out. So Oscar is going to attack one of the characters with the enthrall curse, causing a tingling sensation. The character can defend with observation against Oscar's magic. If the character wins, they resist the magic and has a vision of Oscar's burial. But if Oscar wins, they briefly control the character to have them attack their friend. And that's what happened during my play of the mystery, and it made for a really fun interaction, but I didn't let it get too intense that they actually killed the other PC. It's just a little scratch. So players should find Nora's journal, which is going to be very helpful to figure out that this is a revenant that is haunting the inn and that it's filled by hate because of what happened to him. Now, depending on the level of success will depend on how much information the players get, but the revenant can draw out the life of a person and control a person's soul. And the way that it can be banished is by burying its remains on consecrated ground. Remember at this point that sleepwalkers can be used to intimidate the players into taking further action or to get the plot moving along a little bit more if they seem to not be going in the right direction. Because the sleepwalkers are actually going to be controlled by the revenant and get them secluded into an area that would eventually end in their demise. But my players are pretty straight to the point, so they ended up finding Oscar's remains in the garden root cellar and burying them in consecrated ground. So my overall thoughts, this was a great intro scenario. It felt very contained, which meant it's really attainable for new game masters who are trying to get into Vaesen. Two of the cool things, the play and the sleepwalkers, my players actually didn't get to experience because they got straight to the point. So my recommendation is not to be too afraid of triggering some of the sleep things a little bit earlier so that those can actually happen and bring a little bit more life to the mystery. If you're interested in trying out Dance of Dreams, the core book is going to be linked in the description. And if you want more videos about Vaesen, please let me know in the comments. I think this is a really neat scenario and it's been awesome diving into it. I do have a Patreon, so if you'd like to support me and see more content, that is always appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.